and it is so good to see many of you. Also to see many familiar names. Those of you who are new to our virtual workshop, we are truly excited to have you here. I hope you're ready to learn about how to have a money mindset, especially during this rather difficult time, specifically financially. Today, our presenter is Tisha Townsend. Before we go into the presentation, I would like to go through some important steps. If you hover your mouse on the screen and get to your box, you have the option to mute yourself. We do ask that everybody mute yourself just so that we do not interrupt the presenter and so the presentation goes smoothly. We do recommend you leave on your video. You don't have to if you don't want to, but this will allow us to have some sort of interaction with you. It's really nice to see all of your faces, especially right now that we are self-isolating. But you can stop your video also next to the mute box. We welcome everyone to open your chat box that can be found at the bottom of the screen. So please do click on it so that you can interact with us by asking your questions there. We will be raffling an Amazon gift card, but in order to participate, you do need to sign in. So make sure you sign in the link that I am providing right now, especially if you are a TRIO student. We want to be able to give you participation credit and learning credit. And if you have to give in a passport for a scholarship, also sign in for that. But other than that, ask your questions, sign in, and let's welcome Tisha.
Great, thanks everybody. I'm gonna share my screen with y'all in just a second. And can you, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you enable that for me, please? So I'm gonna be talking about what's your money mindset. So basically, what is your relationship with money? So if you have any questions as I go, I still can't share my screen. Can somebody disable that, please? Thank you. Let's see, give me just a second.
Does that work?
No.
It's not letting me. Oh, there we go. Okay. Does this work?
Let me see. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. If anybody has any questions as we go along, please feel free to, I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions, but also you can put your question in the chat if you don't want to, you're not interrupting me. Feel free to interrupt if you need to ask questions, because I want to make sure that we are answering questions. Let me move this. Okay. So when we talk about what money mindset is, it's the attitude and the relationship that you have with your money, and it's how you make your decisions, and whether or not you're able to achieve your financial goals or not. Depending on what your outlook is on money, this can be a negative or a positive. Just using myself for an example, I used to, and maybe some of you all can relate to this. Money really stressed me out, and having bills and, being in debt was something that I was really stressed out about. So rather than try to figure things out, I used to just do a lot of avoidance of trying to solve my financial problems. And so that ended up being worse for me in the long run, because, when you're not dealing with a problem, it's not like it just goes away. It stays there, and sometimes it can even get worse. So, I'm going to talk to you about, having a positive and a negative mindset, and ways that you can work towards having a more positive mindset. So that way you can be a problem solver when it comes to any financial issues that you may come upon. Does anybody have any questions before I move on? Okay. So when we talk about having a positive versus a negative mindset, and this isn't just for money, but I really want you to focus on how your feelings are towards money. Like when we talk, even when I bring about the issue, like if you were sitting in front of me and if I were asking you a question like, hey, how are your finances? Do you have a lot of debt? What kind of feelings does that evoke? Do you feel like feelings of anxiety and stress, and do you feel like avoiding it? Or is it something that you feel comfortable talking about? So when we say if you have a positive mindset, you see opportunities instead of roadblocks. You recognize that financial situations that arise, that there is, um, it's not like there's not a roadblock, like it's a problem that you can solve, that you feel comfortable asking for help, and that you realize that even if you're only able to take small steps, like say if we're creating a savings account, but you don't make a lot of money, so it's hard to save money, even recognizing that even if you put $5 a month, $5 a week, or whatever that looks like for you, recognizing that those small steps can lead you towards being able to achieve your financial goals. If you have a negative mindset, you might have feelings of fear or intimidation or anxiety just when you think about money, or if you're receiving phone calls from debt collectors. um, you may feel like there's no way out of, say, if you're in a bad financial situation, you may feel like there's no way out of it, that you're helpless in the situation, that it is just going to be that way. And it, maybe even having a feeling of it not being able to change ever, or at least anytime soon. You may procrastinate dealing with financial issues or ignore issues that have arisen for you. Say, if you have like debt collectors, or if you have, a credit card bill that you're trying to pay down, but you're just having a really hard time making it happen. Some people either procrastinate or ignore that as being an issue. Um, and also, this is super important, I think, when it comes to talking about having a negative mindset, is that feeling of immediate gratification. When you're trying to make big changes in your life, I think it's really important to remember that change doesn't happen overnight, particularly when you're dealing with some bigger issues. And so, realizing that you have to really set some long-term goals and break that long-term goal into small actionable steps that will lead you to being able to achieve a goal. Rather than just like, oh, I can't fix it, this month, or maybe even this year, so why should I even try? So that's what we're talking about when we think about positive versus a negative mindset. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So, how do we change a negative mindset into a positive mindset, particularly when we're talking about money? So, something that has helped me understand like why I have the relationship I have with money is like, where did it come from? Did my parents have these kind of conversations with me? Were my parents experiencing financial hardship, and maybe I just absorbed, learned from them that money is a stressful thing to deal with, and it's not something that's pleasant, or it's not something that I should try to confront. Um, I think with any problem in life, if we have like a phobia or a fear of something, that there's a root cause of that. So finding out what the root cause of that is helpful, because then you know what steps you need to be able to take to overcome that negative mindset. Um, you really have to focus on the future, like I spoke earlier, not being a seeker of immediate gratification, but realizing that, big goals take time. Financial goals, if you want to get yourself out of debt or fix your credit score, or, you're saving up for something, it's not something for most of us that can happen overnight. So being able to see that bigger picture and keep that in mind, which means, creating a budget, sticking to it, and setting some goals. Um, Something that can help focus more positively on money is focusing on why you want your financial situation to change. Like, I'll use myself for example. I currently have some debt, and I want to pay it off. Why do I want to pay it off? Because I want to be able to save up to travel. I want to live, as debt free as possible. And I want to be able to, rather than paying my money towards credit card bills, I want to be able to, save money for travel. And so in that process, I also have to make a plan for, how do I need to get there? If I want to pay off my debt, what does that mean for me every month when I get paid and start to pay my bills? If I want to put money aside, what does that mean every month, in order for me to be able to achieve my goals? Um, And I think also, I think this is something depending on how much debt you have, people can sometimes get stuck in this idea of like, I am in so much debt and I'm never going to get out of it. Because it can feel that way, right? If you're not sure which steps to take, or if you feel like you are taking the steps, but it seems like nothing happens, it can really can start to feel really stuck. Um, and then also understanding what your values are about money. And when I talk about values around money, I'm talking about what kind of what kind of material things or other are you valuing? Like, do you value having a nice car and designer clothes and nice shoes and, being able to go out to dinner and be able to take your friends out and to go to the bars and the clubs? Or do you value being able to save money? Do you value being able to create some financial security where you're not constantly stressing about all the money that you're spending on these things? And so, understanding, what are your values? Why do you have those values? Do you need to shift those values to be able to help you achieve some of your larger financial goals? Um, does anybody have any questions on that before I continue to go on? I just want to make sure I'm making myself clear on this.
So just one question. Do y'all feel more financially stable ever since quarantine started? I'm low-key happy that I haven't gone out to eat or like spend money on Ubers and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's going to be different for everybody, right? Because some people have lost their income. So I know a lot of people right now might be experiencing a lot of financial insecurity right now, which is really scary because sometimes, like say if you lose your income, like you don't have control over that, right? I mean, you can try to get another job, but right now is a very weird time, I think, for a lot of people financially. And I know like this person that wrote this question, I know for myself, I have been able to save more money because I'm not going out. Um, like we can't go out, we can't go do anything, can't go out to the restaurants with friends and stuff because that's what I would be doing. So I do have, I wouldn't say I feel more financially secure, but I am able to save up more money. But I think right now that's really gonna, and it's always gonna be different for everybody, right? But I think even more so now, that looks really different for a lot of people. Um, any other comments or questions?
Yes, there is a comment. I haven't had a chance to be able to go out, so it has helped me save, but I did lose one of my jobs, so it evened out a little bit.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be a lot of change with that right now, right? Some of us may, have a certain level of job security and that can change. Hopefully, I know Governor Polis kind of is starting to open things up a little bit and maybe it might be easier for some of us to get back to work. But yeah, um, we're in a very tricky situation right now, right? Okay, I'm gonna go on. Um, So when we're talking about shifting from a negative to a positive mindset, we need to establish what our needs versus our wants are. Excuse me. Um, so when I'm talking about needs and wants, like how important is it that I buy, that pair of shoes? Particularly if you're in a position where, like, if I spend this money, then that means like bills aren't getting paid, or maybe I'm not able to save up as much money. So decide, like, do I need this particular item that I'm wanting to buy, or is that more a want that I can, maybe save up for? I like this idea of, saving up money, just like, in general, making it a point to save money and then being like, you know what, I have a little bit of extra money now. I can get this thing that I want right now because I have money put aside. Rather than, I have money in my hand right now, so I have to spend it. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. When I was doing the research for this, because I always do research, I read articles and people that write about, money management and stuff. This one thing that kept popping up in some of the articles that I was reading that I hadn't quite thought about before, and it says cultivate an attitude of gratitude. And so it ties into what your values around money are. And so I found that really interesting because I never looked at it that way, but I think it makes sense. So, I like, again, I'm just going to use myself for an example because that's, what I have firsthand knowledge of. I don't have, I don't make a ton of money. I mean, I do all right. I feel, I'm comfortable. But I don't get to, spend a lot of money on nice things, the way that if I had a little bit more money, I would be able to. But I am very grateful that, I was able to save up last summer enough money for me to travel to Spain. And that had been a goal of mine for, a very long time. And I was finally in a position where I was able to put aside enough money to be able to do that. And, you know, I don't have a fancy car. I don't spend a lot of money on clothes. I don't spend, I'm not one of those people that spends money on stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's just not, you know, where my particular money values lie. But I was really grateful to be able to go on that trip. And, it was 2 weeks and it was just an amazing experience. And I think, when we tie it to our values, first you have to establish like, what are your goals? How can you take steps to get there? What are your needs versus wants? And then, recognizing that you're taking steps to be able to achieve some of that. And maybe it's like honoring and celebrating the small steps that you take, um, to recognize like, yeah, this actually feels really good. And I feel really grateful that I've been able to save $100 over the course of a few months, say, and there was something that I've been wanting to buy. And now I can, have a little bit of extra money to buy that. So I thought that this was interesting because having an attitude of gratitude, um, I think if you're, like they say, when you wake up in the morning, think of three things that you're grateful for, and it really kind of can set the tone for your day if you allow it to. And I think it's the same idea around money, rather than having these negative feelings and being avoidant of your financial issues, setting a plan in place, taking steps, and sorry, I don't know what happened. Setting a plan in place and recognizing those small steps and like being like, yeah, I'm actually making things happen for myself here. And I think another thing, like money, people have this idea sometimes that, oh, money is the root of all evil. That's actually a saying, that people say. But that I think lends to a negative mindset. So recognize that, money, if you have a good relationship with money, you recognize, yeah, there can be problems, just like with anything else in life. There can be problems that arise, but they are solvable problems. It's not anything that we are ever stuck in a bad situation forever. We are, to a point, we are almost always in a position where we can take steps to make improvements on things. And I think also taking or setting time to create financial goals. And then again, you have to be able to not only set those goals, but break them down into small, achievable um, uh, steps. I'm just checking the chat really quick. It says, Tisha, in your own money management planning and goal setting, do you actually write out your goals, your needs, and your wants? How do you suggest we do this? Yes, I absolutely do. So, for example, like, because I'm a person who likes to save money, if it's not something that I absolutely need, like, say, for example, like a pair of shoes, like I've been looking at Nike, they've been having some really good sales, and there's a few pairs of shoes I'm like, oh, and they're not very expensive because the sale is on. And I'm like, oh, I could really use that pair of shoes. Like that would be really nice. So is that a want? Is that a need? No, it is not a need, but guess where it's going? I have a list of things that I want to spend money on, right? And it's usually, obviously things that I'm, spending a little bit more money on. And so I create a list and I revisit it. And, if I have, been good financially, in regards to spending in a month, that I can be like, you know what, I can actually justify this expense. I'm going to go ahead and knock that off my list and I'm going to treat myself. When it comes to, I had a goal in mind to pay off my car loan. So that way, pay off my car loan and some of my my credit cards, so that way I can be more aggressive in paying off my student loans. I did write that down and I was like, okay, what do I need to do to make this happen fast? Like, I want this to happen in the next 6 months. I want to pay off my car loan in 6 months. I want to have lower balances on my credit card so that way I can be paying more money towards my student loans. What is that going to look like? And I break it down like, here's my balance. I'm dividing it by 6 months. That's how much I'm going to have to pay in order to pay it down in 6 months. Sometimes you have to make adjustments because you're like, you know what, I actually can't afford to pay, say, for example, a $400 car payment. If I extend it by 9 months, what is that going to look like? And so, yes, I do map out, particularly my bigger money goals. Like, okay, here's what the debt is. I want to pay it off. If I take this much time off, how long is it gonna be before I'm able to achieve that goal? I hope that makes sense. But definitely, I'm definitely like, I'm a write things down type person, so that way I can get a good visual that's not just in my head, but like visually in front of me, so I can see what that looks like. Um, let's see. Some additional tips to have a positive mindset. I think it's really important not to compare yourself to others because I think, we see that with social media, right? We look at all these people on Instagram. It's like, oh, they have all these nice things and nice clothes and they get to travel. And, you're like, wow, I'm just over here, like sitting on my couch. It's really easy. What do they say? Comparison is a thief of happiness, I think is something how that saying goes. You have to decide, like, live your own best life, and that's going to look different for everybody. And you can't let like other people or society dictate what you should and shouldn't have and what you should and shouldn't be doing with your life. Like, you're the one that has to live with yourself. And as long as you're happy, like, just don't compare yourself to others. Like, you got to be yourself, right? Because you can have all those things that, everybody else has, but it doesn't mean it's going to make you happy. And chances are, like, we don't even know if those people are actually happy. You know what I mean? And so don't compare yourself. Um, you have to create and maintain good money habits. And if you've ever attended one of my budgeting workshops, um, I'm not sure if we have another one coming up, but I do put on budgeting workshops, and I talk about like, how can you create a budget and how do you stick to, creating a life of having good money habits. And then another important step is like, are the things that you spend money on making you happy? And if they are not, eliminate them. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure, maybe to keep up with our friends, like, oh, all my friends go out every weekend and we go out to the clubs and we spend money and everybody's buying each other drinks, but I can't afford to do that. And if you can't afford to do that, and if that's stressing you out, then don't do it. Figure out a way that you can, possibly still partake of those things in ways that are more realistic for what your current position is. Maybe it means not going out every weekend. Maybe it means not buying, drinks for all your friends. Maybe it means like, you know what, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna hang out, but I'm not gonna spend money because I don't have money to spend, or I have it, but I want to save it for something else. You really have to figure out what works for you and set boundaries with that. And, just like hold yourself accountable for setting boundaries and for respecting them. Um, I think forgiving past money mistakes. I know myself personally in my past, I've made some mistakes and I've never really beat myself up for it, but I've learned from it and I've learned how to do better. I've made mistakes, so now I know what not to do. And that's why I talk so much about money. I have all these financial literacy workshops on different topics because I've made a lot of mistakes and I've learned from them, and I want to pass those on to y'all. So that way, maybe you don't have to, learn from making mistakes. You're just like, oh, this was an awesome tip. I've not been in that situation, but I just found myself in it. So maybe I can try what Tisha said. Um, I think it's also important to change your money story. Like, say if you're in a bunch of debt and you just feel trapped, or, you feel like you're not making enough money to live the life that you would like to live. Sometimes we can have this narrative of like, oh, like I'm broke all the time. I can't afford, all these nice things that other people can afford, or, that whatever that looks like for you. If it's negative, like, you got to find a way to change it. Like, you know what? I don't get to go out. Like, I'll use myself again, for example. I don't go out every weekend, but I get to save money. And that means, maybe a year or so from now, I'm going to get to travel. And I'm so excited about that. And I really look forward to that. And that's what's important to me, is to focus on, like, rather than what I cannot do, or rather what I cannot buy, what is it that I get to do? And that is my focus. Um, and knowing, I think it's really important knowing when to say no to friends and family when you shouldn't spend money. I know there can be a lot of pressure, whether it be, your family needing you to help out with money when you may or may not be able to do that, going out with friends when maybe you shouldn't be going out, and spending money, finding ways to kind of, once you get into the habit of saying no, it gets really easy after a while, but you just have to start. Um, I just want to check the chat really quick and make sure there's no questions. Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of y'all, find yourself either comparing yourself, to other people, and just, I don't know. I think this is something I personally learned from an early age. And if you haven't, um, started practicing it now, like, first off, nobody cares. Maybe some of your friends might give you a hard time for, choices that you're making, but you're the one that has to live with yourself at the end of the day. You're the one that has to suffer the consequences of bad choices, not your friends. And if you're being pressured into making choices that are going to put you in a bad position, maybe those are conversations, like, let's just say if you have people pressuring you, like, oh, you never come out with us on the weekends. How come you never come out? Don't you like spending time with us? Maybe it's like, what? I actually really love spending time with you all, but I just can't afford it right now. And it really hurts my feelings and it makes me feel pressured because I'm trying to be responsible here, and I just feel like you're not being supportive. Like, it can be mean having, like, a very frank and honest conversation like that. Like, hey, these are my goals and you're my friend and I really want you to support me. Please keep inviting me. It doesn't mean I'm always going to be able to go. And maybe you think if I'm not spending money, I'm not having fun, but just know that, I have to make decisions that I'm happy with. And I think really just kind of embracing that mindset will go a long way to help you do what you need to do for yourself, and then hopefully to gain support of the people around you. I just wanted to check the chat again really quick because there was one last comment. Short-term sacrifices for long-term benefits. Yep. Um, that's, I think, one of the difficult things with, like I mentioned earlier, dealing with money, is people want immediate gratification. We live in a society where there's a lot of immediate gratification. And I think recognizing, particularly with money, like, unless you have a lot of it, it just doesn't work that way, right? We have to set goals. We have to save money. We have to make choices that are going to enable us to either save money or to pay stuff off. And that means sacrificing, time with friends or the kinds of things that you're able to do with them when you do hang out. But I think once you start seeing the payoff, it becomes easier to do. Um, let's see. So this was something interesting that I found. It says, "Don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me where you spend your money, and I'll tell you what they are." And I think this goes for a lot of things. Like, right, people can talk a lot about, certain things that they are doing with themselves, but sometimes their actions speak differently, right? And I think with money, you really have to, in order to be in a positive place with money and to be able to meet your goals, you really have to be, not talking about it, but sitting down with yourself, creating your goals, and breaking down those steps that you're going to have to take to get you to those goals. Um, and so that's I think now just kind of want to have a conversation with y'all. Sorry, I'm trying to, oh, wait. Um, Give me just a second. I kind of just want to have a conversation with y'all about, answer any questions, maybe, like, if you had any questions about, like, goal setting, or how to have conversations with people when you're trying to set boundaries around spending money. Um, I just want to see what your all's thoughts and feelings are, or questions are about this. Somebody had a good suggestion here, and I think this is fantastic. Having an alternate activity with friends that is more affordable. And I think that is great. It is a great idea. Like, you could be like, yeah, everybody, bring your own snacks. We're going to play some board games. We're going to, um, watch some Netflix, or, let's get together and have some dinner and let's make it a potluck. So everybody brings something to drink and everybody brings something to eat. And that way we all get to have a lot of fun. That I can say I've been to a number of potlucks with friends and those can be so fun. It can be nobody's spending a ton of money. What are suggestions you have for talking with family and setting boundaries there? Yeah, that's a tough one because I think even more so than our friends, we want to be able to help our families out if needed. And I think just like, you know, I think with anything in life, being able to sit down and have an honest conversation, depending on like why are your parents or somebody in your family asking you to spend money? Is it because they need help with bills? And so maybe it's renegotiating with your family, if that is the case, what that looks like. Just be like, look, mom or dad or whoever it may be, I want to be able to contribute to the household. Here's what I'm able to do. And so that means first planning it out for yourself, what that looks like. So you go into the conversation being like, you know what, I'm trying to save money for a car because I want to stop taking the bus, say, for example, or stop taking the train. I also want to be able to help my family pay these bills. This is what I need to do in order to be able to achieve both of those goals. So you'll have to sit down with yourself and see what that looks like. And then having a very honest conversation with your family, like, look, I want to be able to help out and I will when I can, and this is what it's going to look like. You just really have to be honest. And I think, that's the hardest part. I know, I'm a 40-year-old woman and I still have a hard time having honest conversations with my parents because I was raised like you don't talk to your parents a certain way, right? I was raised you don't talk back to your parents, you don't call out your parents, even when they might be putting you in a bad position. But I've just found the only way to do it is just to do it like a band-aid. Prepare ahead of time, know what you're going to go in to say, how you're going to lay it out to them, so that way they can hopefully see like, you know what, yes, we need help with the bills, but it would also be helpful for you to save money for a car, so that way we can stop giving you rides, for example, or not worrying about having to miss class because the train was late or whatever. um you just have to be honest. I think honesty is, and sometimes it feels uncomfortable and sometimes it might hurt, but I think if you are clear that you're coming from a good place of like, yes, you want to help out and you have to be able to take care of yourself as well, I think is super important. And hopefully people will be receptive. Um, for people, suggestions for people who set goals but get tempted. That's why I think writing things down is really good, whether it be in your phone, have somewhere where you keep your financial goals, like, "This is what I'm trying to buy. This is what it looks like to get there." And so when you're seeing, you're saving up for a car, I don't know, I'll just keep using that as an example, but you see, like, a cool pair of shoes or something that you really wanna have because, like, there's a little bit of a sale, so it's almost okay, but you don't need them. It would just be nice. I think looking back at your goals for one, and I think something that I do is like, just because I'm like, oh, I just saw that I should buy it now because I just saw it, taking time to really think about it. So if I, particularly when I'm, bored at home and stop, looking at stuff on the internet that I might want to buy, I almost never buy stuff right away. I decide, do I need it? And if it's not a need, then how much do I really want this? Do I want it enough? So if 3 days from now, that pair of Nikes that I saw on the internet, if I still feel like, you know what, man, that's such a good deal, I don't want to pass it by, I really want them, then I might go ahead and get them. But I don't make that instant decision. I sit on it and I think about it. And people even do it in the stores, like, oh, I just saw this really nice purse, it's kind of expensive. Walk around the store with it for a while. Don't say I'm going to buy this. Just, walk around and think about, it's a little bit expensive. Do I need to actually spend my money on it? Like, just put that reactionary, like, instant gratification need on pause for a second and think about it. Um, and I think that's probably one of the best tips that I can say for you. I want to see, what is this comment? Something very they see I'm saying no to going to the bar, not because I don't want to see them, but because I need to save money. So it sounds like you might already be having those conversations with people, which is really good. I think, even with your friends, it's important to be honest of what you're trying to achieve in life. So that way they understand, because it sucks when you stop getting invites to places. Um, but if they have an understanding, they might be like, she might not be able to come, but let's keep inviting her. So I think that's great. And it might encourage them because they might see you meeting your goals. And it might encourage them to be like, hey, I see you're meeting your goals and I think that's really awesome. I want to do some of that too. And then you might have a buddy who's like, in the same position trying to do the same stuff that you're doing. And they might be asking you for tips too. Um, what suggestions would you give someone who wants to get their own place with no roommates? That's a tough one, particularly in Denver. I mean, I've lived by myself for a really long time because I had a roommate, but she like screwed me over with a $400 phone bill, and that was really a crappy feeling to have a friend do. And after that, I was like, you know what? I don't want to have roommates. Like, I'm an introvert. I like living alone. So, what it meant for me is I had to make, and even still living on one income in Denver with a car payment, student loans, and paying my own bills, it's not easy. I have to make sacrifices. I don't go out every weekend. I don't. I'm not a big drinker anyway, so I don't go out to bars. I don't spend money on clothes all the time. I budget myself. I get my money. I get paid once a month. All the bills get paid. I look at that extra, how much is going into savings because I got goals that I'm saving for. I have a travel savings account. I have my regular savings account, and then there might be a little something that I'm trying to treat myself with that month. And so I just see, what can I manage, or what can I put on hold? Maybe I do have that extra money, um, but maybe I could also just put that away. So you got to budget yourself. You got to, go in knowing, how much. First off, how much do I make? How much is rent? And what are all my bills going to be? So how much is my electricity going to be? Do I have to pay water? Do I pay my own phone bill? Do I have car insurance? Do I have a car payment? So what do I make versus what is going to be coming out, and how much is going to be left over? Because let me tell you, nothing sucks than being able to living on your own and finding that you literally barely make it to the end of the month. It is very stressful, and it depending on what your current living situation is, that might be a better alternative, because I can think of a few situations where that would be better than what you're living with now. But you want to make sure that you can afford to do it and can afford to do it with a certain level of comfort. And that might mean renting a room from somebody. It might mean living in somebody's basement, because it's really nice to have a nice apartment. But if you don't have any money, if you barely have money to pay for groceries at the end of the month, that nice apartment really doesn't, it only goes so far. So you have to be realistic about what it is that you can afford. And so sitting down and taking note of what is actually realistic for you. Um, and it might mean having a roommate, because I think of a student that I work with. She has a roommate who's never home, so she practically lives by herself. So it might mean um, finding a situation like that where that this person works a lot, or they stay at their boyfriend's house, or their girlfriend's house, or their partner's house. Um, you really gotta, it's doable depending on how much you make, and you got to be realistic about what your living situation should be. Um, Sam says she does a lot of window shopping. Me too. I've been doing a lot of it lately. Haven't bought anything though. Yay. Still want those Nikes though. I'm not going to buy them. I already know this. I'm not going to buy them. But I'm going to keep looking at them because they're pretty. Maybe down the line. Yes, rent is cheaper with roommates. How can you get your own place? Well, we can talk about that. Sit down. And maybe it might be helpful for you also if you're not certain how to do this on your own. Like sit down with somebody who, whether it be a parent or a friend that lives on their own, just be like, hey, how do you do it? Can we sit down and can you help me plan this out? Because I know I had a friend who, her living situation was very different from mine, but she was struggling. And I was like, well, why don't we sit down and, because I hear you have a lot of debt and you have, a lot of responsibilities. Maybe there's something that you can do, that maybe you're not seeing because you haven't tried it before. Maybe I've done something that you haven't tried before. So do you want to sit down and we can kind of talk out a plan, that because sometimes other people might see stuff that you don't see. And, one, make it be somebody that you can trust. Two, make it somebody that is responsible financially and making good decisions. And that might be helpful for you. Blanca has a good tip. I found that I used to buy things from Dollar Tree and cheaper things, but then became involved in a relationship where my boyfriend said I should not settle for things and get things I really want instead. I fell into the trap of getting things I actually wanted. It is hard now to get out of that habit because I know I cannot afford those items. I find myself justifying the purchases as good buys because they're useful now. And I think that it's that's very interesting that you bring that up, and just a little perspective. I think there are some things that you can justify spending money on, right? I know for me, food happens. I love food. What I it's my pleasure in life, right? So sometimes I spend money on food, but I shop sales. If I can find an item that is, I don't buy, like, say, the cheapest brand of toilet paper, say, but I don't also want to spend a bunch of money on toilet paper. I mean, come on. So find things that you can save money on. Meal prepping. I make my own breakfast. Even when campus is open, I make my own breakfast every day. I take it to work. I make my own lunch every day. I take it to work. And almost every night I'm eating from home. And that's a big saver. So you got to find ways to save money. Shopping sales, um, not buying Starbucks coffees all the time. They're nice. Consider it a treat. Maybe you know, I think once every other week would be a nice treat for me. You really appreciate it when you don't have it that much. Um, I think certain things, like, I've been spending more money on, like, shoes and clothes. Like, I'll buy one pair of pants, but I'll spend, more money than I typically would. Like, I might get them at Target, but if I want this pair of pants to last, so I'm going to spend a little bit money, and get them somewhere else. And it's like an investment, but I don't do that all the time. I do that once every, gosh, maybe once every 6 months, where I buy one really nice thing for myself. Before this past winter, I bought a nice pair of shoes. I wore them all the time, but they're a nice pair of shoes. I spent a lot of money on them. So it's kind of an investment. So there's times that you can do that and times that you shouldn't. And, sometimes you just can't spend that kind of money, and that's okay, because that's a temporary situation. And I think it's important to recognize, you know, you're all students right now. You may not be making a lot of money, but that's going to change when you get your degrees. And those are going to be the times when you're like, you know what, I can spend a little bit more money on this, and it's okay. But you got to be able to afford to do it in the first place. What's the point of having that organic, all natural house cleaner if you can't afford to feed yourself? Like, stuff like that. Um, let's
Tisha,
see.
I don't I don't know if you missed it, but there was a question that asked, what do you suggest when it comes to saving money while dating?
While what?
While dating.
While dating? I think you have to come to an agreement with your partner. You have to have an honest conversation about what your financial situation is. Um, if you like to go out and do stuff but you can't afford it, you have to be like, babe, I like us to be able to spend time together. I want to be able to treat you. I can't afford to do it every week. So maybe once a month, say, we go someplace really nice. We go someplace that we can't go to every day. Or, it means getting creative with it. I dated many years ago a young man who was very financially irresponsible. And when I realized that he was, like, having problems paying for these expensive, expensive meals that we were going out for, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you can't afford to do this. Let's not do it. Let's talk about what we can afford to do. So let's go hiking and let's have a really nice picnic. Um, let's instead of going to the movies and spending money on movie tickets and getting a drink, depending on where you're going, or getting popcorn, and it can get expensive. Let's have a nice movie night at home, and I'm going to make you some dinner, or let's get creative with snacks and maybe we'll bake a cake or make some brownies or something or some cookies. Like get creative, but have honest conversations, particularly when you're in relationships, because you don't want to set the bar so high and not be able to maintain it, because that can be disappointing to somebody. But if you're able to be with somebody that can, see your situation and respect and support you, that's the kind of person you want to be with. So these are kind of the things that are going to show you too, hey, is this person going to be okay with me not spending a bunch of money? Where are their values, and do they align with my values, and is that the kind of person that I want to be with, right? Sometimes it can be a real revelation. Oh, they just like it that I can take them out all the time and spend money on them. That's not the kind of person you want to be with. You want to be with somebody who can meet you where you're at, support you and help you grow to get to there, right? Together. That's my suggestion. Be honest. That's a sensitive subject for me, money and relationships, because I've been through that. I've been through that. And you know, if you're not honest, you can have a lot of resentment um, towards people, because you could start to feel used after a while, and not appreciated and not supported. Um, with the living situation, I think working in small goals to big goals is good. Yep. Start small, start setting small goals right now. It gets you got to, it's like a muscle. You got to practice it, right? Set small goals, start achieving them, make bigger goals, start achieving them, then set those really large long term goals and start taking steps. You got to take baby steps. Yep. Sam says she moved out with 4 roommates, then went down to 2, then 1, and now she lives on her own. I think that's good. And sometimes you just got to live with people, right? You may not make it if you're working on campus, for example, and that's your job, you may not be able to afford your own place, but you can set a goal. Just be like, you know what? I know I'm graduating in a year and a half. I'm going to save as much money as I can. I'm going to have roommates right now. And so that way, maybe when I graduate, I can move out because I'm going to hopefully get a little bit of a better job, make a little bit more money, and maybe then maybe that's the goal, working towards living on your own. And it takes time. What I tell myself to save money is, if you can't afford to buy 2 of them, then you can't afford to buy one if it has saved a bunch of money. That's a good trick. I mean, sometimes you got to create these little tricks for yourself, right? I think that's um, a good trick. Um, Yeah, and finding roommates, like if you have to live with roommates, make sure that you're living with people that are responsible too, just like in a relationship. You don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that's financially irresponsible, because guess who's going to be picking up the slack? You, been that person. You don't want to live with somebody that, is out partying all the time and can't afford to pay their bills at the end of the month, because guess who's going to have to pick it up? You. Chances are, if you're being more responsible than they are. So you got to surround yourself with people that have similar values as you, to a point, people that you live with, your friends. You want your friends to support you in your goals. um, yeah. What other questions? I feel like I've been talking a lot. I feel very passionately about the subject of money, so I got a lot to say about it.
Where would I start? If I don't know, because everything you're saying, I really want to be financially stable. But I do work on campus, and sometimes that can be hard. Paying for rent and then helping with rent and paying bills. And when I was younger, I would spend a lot of money in credit cards. So I'm still paying that off, and bills and everything else.
I think one of the first steps that you can take is sit down and take account of money that you're spending. And I'm talking every bit of money that you're spending. Are you still putting stuff on credit cards? Are you still buying things that maybe you shouldn't be buying because you just don't have the money to? Where can you eliminate money? That's your first step. Can I eliminate, like, this is what I did. I literally saved all of my receipts from everything. I looked at my bank account and I literally kept daily, like, this was like a job for me. Daily, what am I spending? What am I spending money on? What kind of categories? Am I going out to dinner too much? Am I buying Starbucks too much? Am I going shopping too much? What kind of stuff am I buying from Target? Is it stuff that I need for the household that I'm out of, like, cleaning stuff and, necessities? Or am I buying, oh, I bought a pair of jeans and I saw a cute pair of earrings and, so first you need to see what you're spending versus how much you have coming in and then what you can eliminate. And you got to eliminate, period. Because I guarantee you there's even me, somebody who's pretty good at budgeting, there's always something I'm like, I didn't need to buy that. Why did I buy that? Is it nice that I have it? Yes. Did I need to buy it? No. And you got to get real with yourself. You got to be like, you know what? Enough. Enough of this BS. Pardon my language, but you got to get tired of your situation to a point where you're like, I am done with this. I'm done spending money on stuff that I don't need. This is the stuff that I don't need and it is out. It's going to be a treat if I do. And then you're going to see, oh, I have a little bit of money. After a month or two of doing that, I have a little bit of money, whereas I'm not used to having a little bit of money at the end of the month, right? What am I going to do with that money? Possibly if you have debt, rather than putting it in savings, you're going to use that extra money to pay off that credit card debt. You got to get real with yourself about what you're spending your money on. Some baking apps help break that down for you. Yep, exactly. My bank does that too. I can filter my expenditures. So it breaks it down like household, like bills, entertainment, stuff like that. Use lots of apps out there. There's all kinds of tools that can help you be accountable for what you're spending money on. You just got to get real about it and you got to be like, all right, I'm done. Like think of your spending habits as that friend who, you know what, this friend, are they fun? Yeah, sometimes they're fun, but I get into a lot of trouble with them. I always stay up too late. I'm wasting a bunch of time with them and I just got to get them out of my life. Think about your spending habits like that and just be like, you know what, I got to be done with this. I got to be done with this. And just do it. You got to hold yourself accountable. If you need somebody to hold yourself accountable, find an accountability buddy. Whatever that looks like for you, you got to get real about it. And you're the only one that's going to do it. Nobody else is going to be like, here, let's, we may set a plan, but you're the one that's got to take the steps to do it. And you're not going to get out of your situation until one, you start taking steps, or years from now, you start making enough money where you just pay it off in bulk, but you still have these bad habits. Yeah, cooling off period, taking 24 hours before making purchasing decisions. Yep. US Bank told this person that they were spending too much money at Target and that made you think a lot. Yep. Even your banking people, if you're trying to figure out how to pay off debt, if you don't want to go to somebody that you know because you're embarrassed or whatever, go to your bank and be like, hey, I need help figuring out how to pay off my debt. Can you help me put together a plan? And that's part of their job. You just got to be honest. Like with anything in life, any problem in life that you're trying to change, it doesn't matter if it's money or anything. You got to be real with yourself and you got to be willing to make sacrifices to make change happen. Because you can't change anything in your life without making sacrifices. You got to lean into the discomfort. You got to, I was thinking about this time that we're in right now, right? And I think it's making a lot of people uncomfortable and a lot of people are drinking a bunch, because they're doing things. I think not everybody, but a lot of people are doing things to avoid the problem, right? To escape the problem. But this time that we're in, I think there's lessons to be learned for each of us. And each of us has different lessons to learn in our life, right? And you gotta sit with it. You gotta sit with that uncomfortable feeling and you gotta hear the lesson that is being told to you. And you know what? I hear what you're saying, universe, whatever it is that you believe in. I hear what you're saying. And I see what I've been doing wrong and I'm gonna do different. And this is what I'm gonna do different to get there. Because over there is where I want to be. And you got to see what that is for yourself. Sam says, I think being mindful, you are a student right now. That means your money should go to the basics. Once you graduate, you can start doing more of your fun financial goals. Right now, it is about getting through your degree to get to the good spot. And that's exactly right. That is exactly right. We have a workshop where we're going to talk a little bit about that today, right, Sam? Today at 3:00, we're going to be talking about why go to graduate school. a little bit of a side topic, but we are going to talk about our own personal experiences and how, Sam and I were both in your all shoes. We didn't come from, I don't know, I'll speak for myself, and I think I can probably speak a little bit for Sam. Our parents didn't have a lot of money. I didn't grow up rich. I have had a job since I was 14 years old. I have been working since I was 14 years old. More than half of my life, I have been working because my parents didn't have money to buy me stuff. And I wanted to, buy lunch on campus when I was in high school. I wanted, I didn't always want to pack lunch. So I had a job. Um, and we worked really hard. And now, we have these degrees and we have these jobs that have some benefits and we're making a little bit more money. And we had to sacrifice a lot and go without a lot of things. And it was okay because I can look back and, you know, I'm not sad about those clothes I wasn't able to buy or, being able to go out all the time with my friends. Like that's not the stuff that I look back on and I'm like, oh, I regret that, you know. Instead of buying books, I started checking them out of the library. Yep, that's another good tip for those of you who are readers. Books are expensive. Ooh, I'm a reader too. That gets real expensive. Or finding them used on Amazon. I found, I can't remember which book, but I bought it for a penny when this book I'd been looking for, and it was a penny, and I only had to pay for shipping. I was so excited. Yep, that's all I got. Unless anybody has questions.
Thank you, everyone. Just a reminder, if you could all please sign in to the link that I provided. Of course, if you haven't already. But if you're interested in coming to the next workshop, I provided the link on the chat. It will be at 3 p.m. and it will cover why is grad so important. We will also be having our last financial building block workshop on April 28th, which will cover a workshop about building your credit. Thank you so much for being here. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Tisha.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tisha.